One of the things that I've noticed over the past couple of decades of helping women and couples retire safely and securely is that a lot of people don't know how big the required minimum distribution is going to become. They haven't really thought about that, and they don't understand how that's going to impact them in the future. What kind of an impact is that going to have on their retirement plan? And you may be in the same situation. You may not have really thought about how big your required minimum distribution is going to become, or how that's going to impact your financial situation. And so I want to talk today about some of the things that you can know in order to not only not get surprised, but also avoid negative consequences. Make sure that you don't have any negative impact on your plan because you didn't plan ahead. And I want to talk today about a couple who have reached that age of having to start required minimum distributions. Share some of their numbers and their information just to give you some idea of how this can impact somebody and how it could impact you as well. Now, this couple, they're reaching that age of starting required minimum distributions this year. They retired a few years back. But they've always been very good at saving. They saved all of their life. They lived within their means. They saved a lot of money. They had a nice chunk when they retired. They also have always minimized their income tax each and every year. And so they made sure they kept that as low as possible so that they could have more money to save, have more money to live on. And now that they retired, it's really hard for them to switch to spending or paying more than the very minimum in income tax. And yet, when it comes to your required minimum distribution, it can be good not to wait until the last minute and pay what you have to. That required distribution with the required tax on that. Because your required minimum distribution can get to be very big. That's a very important point. It can become very big, and if you don't do anything about it, it gets to be even bigger. But you can do something about it. You can minimize some of that growth on that required minimum distribution. That requires that you plan ahead. And so I want to talk about some things today that you could do to help your situation. But first, let's talk about this couple. This year, or this last year, their income was almost $100,000. And that's what it's been in retirement. They've got Social Security. They've got an inherited IRA that's coming in. They've got some interest. They've got a pension, a little bit of pension income. And so they're running at around $100,000 of income. Their tax on that in 2025 was just $2,400. I'm rounding off, but it was right at $2,400 because a lot of their Social Security is not taxable based on the income level that they're at. And they have the standard deduction plus the enhanced senior deduction. So a deduction of $46,700 against taxable income, they're paying tax on very little. Now this year, 2026, they're going to have to start their required minimum distribution. And it's going to be $121,000. And that's going to stack on top of the roughly $100,000 of income. That's going to push them from the 12% tax bracket up to the 22% tax bracket. And their income tax is going to go from that roughly $2,400 to $26,000, $27,000 of income tax. That's a pretty big jump. Now, they're still in the 22% bracket, so that's not bad. The problem is that required minimum distribution of $121,000 is just a fraction of the growth. This last year, their IRA grew by $280,000. And so they would be taking just a fraction of the growth. The IRA is going to continue to grow and over time become an even bigger number. On top of that, as they age, then they have to take a bigger percentage out as the required minimum distribution. So if I project 10 years ahead, from age 73 to from age 73 to age 83, then in 10 years, that required minimum distribution could well be over $200,000. If they earn just 3% as a net return, after, subtracting out the required minimum distribution, net growth in the IRA, after that's subtracted out, the required minimum distribution will be $239,000 in 10 years. If they earn 4% net, it's going to be $263,000. If they earn 5% net, it's going to be $295,000. So it gets to be a much bigger number if all that's done is taking the minimum amount each and every year and letting the rest of the account continue to grow. Now, what can you do to avoid having it become too big a number? Because each bump up in the amount that is coming out of the IRA as that required minimum distribution, that is not only increasing your income tax bracket, but it could also increase the cost of your Medicare due to the IRMA surcharge, and that can get to be an even bigger number than we're even going to talk about today. That's a whole different video that I'll have to do at a different time to explain some of the things that we're seeing in that realm and in that area. But I just want to focus today on how you can think ahead so that your required minimum distribution doesn't become too big a number. Now, if you're still working, you can be putting money into the Roth 401k. You can also make sure that you're saving money outside of your IRA, that you're, getting money into the 401k to get the match, but then saving money outside of that so that it is not in that IRA bucket during retirement. When you retire, you want to look at the gap years that you have and think about, should you spend some of your IRA earlier than you have to in order to level out the tax on it? Should you convert some of it to a Roth IRA in order to get some shifted into a account that doesn't have a minimum distribution, doesn't have any future tax, is going to grow tax-free? Should you begin to consider gifting? You can start that at age 70 and a half and gift some of your IRA to the charities that you support. There are things that you can do depending on your situation, what would work best for you, but things that you can do to make sure that that future required minimum distribution doesn't become too big and doesn't continue to get to be an even bigger and bigger and bigger number over your retirement years. That's a pretty big risk. Thinking about the fact that we don't know what future tax rates are going to be. They could change quickly. They could shift. They could be much higher. And so keeping a focus on what you can do to build tax-free income or income that's not going to be subject to a required minimum distribution and begin to level some of this out. Begin to make your plan and think through not just this year, not just minimizing your tax in this year, but think through your lifetime and what can you do to make sure that your IRA does the very best for you over your lifetime and that all of your retirement savings are used to your best benefit to optimize your retirement. And if you are confused about that, you have some questions and you would like to, have a little bit of input or insight into how you can do that, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to help you where I can. So with that, I wish you to be on your best path in your retirement.